Hello and welcome to this fireside chat. I'm joined by Director of Product Marketing at Airslate, Aaron Brennan. Aaron has over a decade of experience being a product marketing manager at companies such as Google and LastPass, and he was recognized as one of the top 50 product marketing influencers in 2019 and is also an avid hiker. So, Aaron, great to have you here today.
Thanks.
So today we're going to be discussing leading, building, and growing great product marketers. So Aaron, if we can start with a sort of step back. So why is it worth developing someone into a great product marketer?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the reason that it's worth developing somebody into a great product marketer is for a few reasons, right? One, it puts less stress on you as a manager to manage and optimize all those projects that goes on a day to day. As everyone knows in product marketing, you get pulled in a lot of different directions. And a lot of those different directions come at the very last minute. Hey, we need something up and running. Hey, we have this campaign going. Can you approve it? And so if you if you don't have your product marketers up and running and ready to go, they can't take on any of those tasks. So you end up taking on a lot of those tasks. The second reason is most product, as a manager, your job is to grow people and to make them happy. Most product marketers and most people want to grow their careers. They want to gain experience. They want to learn new things. And if you don't offer them those opportunities to grow and expand, they'll leave. So you'll be constantly worried about a retention problem by people coming in, getting tired of doing the same job and then leaving because they feel there's no growth or way for or path up for them. So your job as a manager is to make sure that they can grow and experience new things and become stronger and better product marketing managers in their careers. And then lastly is the better they get at their jobs, the better results you're going to see in the long run. If they are working diligently and taking on new tasks, learning new tasks. They might even be bringing new things to the table that you've never thought of before that you can implement and roll out in areas that you never thought of to expand your reach to users, to expand their experience, to make sure that they're incredibly happy, using your product.
Sure. So obviously picking the right person to offer that and be able to grow into that role is vital.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't necessarily think many people grow up thinking, I want to be a product marketing manager or I want to be a product marketer. So what is the kind of skill set that you're looking for? What kind of core competencies does someone have to be able to grow into that role?
Yeah, and I'll echo that. I had no idea that I was going to grow up to be a product marketing manager. Actually, I didn't even go to college for something that would be even aligned to what product marketing does. I went to college for sports management with a little bit of a focus on marketing, and then just kind of fell into product marketing and really loved it and enjoyed it. It's also a fairly new role; like it hasn't been around for that long, so I can echo that. Like nobody grows up being like, I want to be a product marketer. Like when you see the kids, like the video of the kids saying like, what do you want to be when they grow up? You're not saying like doctor, police officer, firefighter, product marketer, right? Kids don't say that. So I was lucky enough to come in and figure out what product marketing was and really love it. But when I look for a product marketer, one thing really sticks out to me as most crucial and important. And the people that I need most is actually problem solvers. Um, I've worked and talked with a lot of other managers, and they'll get very ingrained in looking for good writers or good project managers or good content builders. But my the product marketers that I typically help grow and have seen the biggest success in aren't people that have specific tasks in specific area like writing. It's people that are problem solvers. Like, do you know how to solve a problem can you look at a problem, diagnose it, and then go solve it without anybody ever else having to talk to you? And that, I think, is crucial to product marketing, because ultimately what we're doing is product marketing. You can say great writing is a piece to it. If they can be a good writer, that's good. They can be a good project manager, that's good. If they can work cross-functionally, that's fantastic. But ultimately their main job is working to solve problems on, moving the business needle forward, making sure that the customer experience is fantastic, right? The other pieces, you typically have frameworks within the organization that do that. You have content writers that do the content, right? So nice to have somebody who can write content, but usually I have content writers, so they do that. I have marketers who, build the campaigns and do a lot of that stuff. So I don't need a product marketer who can build the campaigns. I have support teams that can help with support and fix problems as they're coming in on the back end. So when I look for product marketers, it's, hey, can you solve a big gaping problem? Can you make it scalable? Can you build it up? And that's the piece that is most important to me. So really a strategic function.
Right. Okay. So would you say sort of when they're in the role, like is a intense knowledge of the product important? How?
Extremely important. I had a product manager who's a really good friend of mine, and he always used to yell at me if he felt like I was leaning more towards marketing, and he would yell at me and say I'm a capital P, I'm not a capital M, meaning
Right.
I'm a capital product marketing manager, which means it's my job to understand the product, understand how it works, understand how it solves problems, and ultimately you need to demo as well as anybody else. Like you need to know the product as well as a product manager. You need to be able to hop on phones when product managers aren't there. So yeah, I mean, you need to know the product better than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that's incredibly important for that role.
So you've already sort of alluded to the fact that a PMM works across teams, that they have to be cross-functional. So how important is it to align your sort of product marketing team, and what kind of departments do you say like are the most important to get that alignment with?
Yeah, so it depends on. So that's a good question. So aligning a team gets a little difficult because every company and organization is built a little bit differently, right? So if it's a large organization, typically the product is so big that you have product marketers that are focused on one piece of the product,
Mm.
right? So like if you were, let's say Google, right, has product marketers that are focused on, 6 or 7 product marketers focused on one product, right? But they're focused on one piece of that
Mm.
within the product. So they're focused on notifications, right? And then you have somebody else focused on like pictures or something else. So they're focused on that one area, working cross-functionally to gain metrics in those areas to move forward. When you're in a smaller company, product marketers tend to focus on a whole product, but cross-functionally. So a great example is that when I was at LogMeIn and LastPass, I had 4 different products that rolled up into me. One of them, which was LastPass, I had a product marketer for each one of those products. So it was really, they were product focused, but we weren't big enough to get, granular and saying like, hey, I want somebody focused on registration and then somebody else focused on, core functionality, right? Although if we did get that big, that's probably how I would roll it out. So it depends on how the size of the company, how you actually align your product marketers to. You can assign them to a certain feature within a product to make sure that feature is, moving forward and gaining traction and people are understanding how it works. Or you can do it for an overarching product where they're saying, hey, you're to that product. Now, as far as who they're aligned to internally within the company, I always give a priority. Your first person that you work most closely with is product management. Again, we're rolling back into that. You're a capital P, not a capital M. function. So it's your job to work with product managers. It's your job to help guide the roadmap. It's your job to understand how the product works, and talk to the other teams around that. After that, it's usually marketing, because a lot of what product marketing does needs marketing's help. So for example, when we were at, when I was at LastPass, we had a product marketing manager that was, towards the end, we had a product marketer who was focused on registrations, which meant they worked very closely with, campaign building. They worked very closely with emails. They worked very closely with onboarding, and they worked very closely with product management in that onboarding structure and how they got onboarded. So, they were much more heavily focused on, sort of the marketing side of things. We did end up hiring somebody else who was what we called part of the core team, which meant that once somebody's onboarded, they had to continue to engage with the product, right? Because we didn't want them falling off and being, a churned customer. So, that person worked much more closely with product management, worked much more closely with UX and UI, but still had to work with marketing to, send out emails, send out campaigns to people that had, fallen off or had stopped using the product to say, hey, we have this new function and feature. Why don't you come back and try it out? Mm-hmm. So those are the roles that most importantly they engage with. Other than that, support is a big one, because we need to be able to talk to support of what are the biggest features, what are the main features that people need to engage with. Trying to think of who else. Sales, obviously, we focus a lot with sales, understanding the product, building sales enablement. How does the product ultimately work? Getting on sales calls, helping them talk through some of the higher level, bigger sales is what we try to do on a day-to-day basis, is making sure that they can sell, talk to how the product works. So those are really the main areas of focus for a team. So the cross-functional nature of the position needs to work with all those teams probably the most, with being able to be ready to work with operations, with engineering, with anybody else, as sort of projects come up. Because as I was saying, like it's really solving problems, and a problem can arise, or you see a problem that could bring in anybody from any number of different parts of the organization that could help solve it.
Sure. And obviously, like you've mentioned, the function of a PMM can change depending on the size and the company size of the team. So when you want to grow your PMM team, what are the indicators that you need to? Is it about speed, growing it as quickly as possible? Capacity, when you can grow it, you may as well. What sort of things are you looking at as to the indicators to grow a team?
So the indicators I typically look at to grow a team are around speed to get things done. Always if I start to see churn happening, right, that's always a big indicator. So I see people coming in, I see people registering, but then I see them falling out the other side. That means that we're not getting projects done. That means we're not communicating with them at the right cadence to, make sure that what they're coming in and being happy with is being taken care of, which means that my product marketers are spread too thin, right? So it's when I start to see like metrics like that start to move in the wrong direction that I'm saying, okay, well, what's going on? Is my product marketer who's doing this stretched too thin, or are they not doing their job? And, I typically run weekly meetings with my product marketers, so I know what's coming down the pipeline. I know what they're working on, and I can say, yeah, those things are getting done. There are things here that are moving forward that are really important. So we need to grow this team. We need to bring it out. Projects not getting done, on a timely manner is always a big one too. So for us, even currently right now in my current organization, like projects don't get done at the speed that we ultimately need them to get done. And sometimes they don't get done at all because other teams are larger than us, and they're moving much more quickly because they have the resources. So scaling out that team. So we'll be doing that soon too.
Sure. And you've mentioned about sort of the measurements of how someone's doing at their job. So what kind of KPIs are you looking at?
Yeah, so so this depends on somebody's role, right? So if they're on the front end and they're in charge of registrations, they're really registration, second week retention, onboarding, and using specific features and functions first. What I did in the beginning of my management career that has changed drastically to where I am now is when my team would come in, I would actually, give them their metrics of what they need to hit. And I noticed that people were not engaging as well as I hoped. They were not as excited about it. So I ended up changing that. And now the way that I manage my team around metrics is I give the high overarching metrics and say, like, I sit them all down and say, all right, guys, these are the metrics we need to move. We need to increase registrations by this much. We need to, increase core capability by this much. We need to increase referrals by this much. We need to increase power usage by 20%, right? Or whatever those metrics are. And I say, all right, guys, I need you to go away. I need you to figure out what metrics you need to move to hit those metrics. Right. And typically they'll come back to me and they'll say, hey, all right, so I want to increase second week retention. I want to increase registrations coming through the funnel. I want to increase the quality of the stuff coming through the funnel. Hey, I want to send out, I want to increase the feature that somebody uses every third month to be this feature, because we know that this feature has a direct correlation to becoming a more power user, right? So they come back to me and they give me the metrics that they think are going to move this stuff. Ultimately, my job is to make sure that my product marketers are the ones spending 40 hours a week in that specific area that I have them in. So they are actually the experts at it, not me.
Yeah.
Right. It's not my job to be an expert there. It's my job to make sure that they're the expert there and I'm giving them the resources. So me giving them the metrics when I first started was just saying, like, oh, well, you guys don't know what you're doing. But really, they did know what they were doing. I didn't know what they were doing, and I didn't know the metrics because I wasn't spending 40 or 50 hours a week in there. So my goal has been to empower my product marketers to basically create their own metrics, right? And then we sit down and we align to do those metrics go with like the overarching, and then I say, okay, well, how do you plan to accomplish these metrics, right? So it's really empowering them to be their own managers, right? And I try the people that I try to hire are people who are problem solvers, who want to be able to say, like, hey, I did the research, this is the problem, and I'm gonna go solve it, right? I had a manager at Google who used to tell me this, and I sort of have the same mentality. With the people that I manage, is he said, I will consider myself a great manager and I will consider myself successful when the day that somebody reports to me finally jumps me and I report to them. And, that's a sign of a really great manager. And I'm hoping it happens to me one day where, somebody that I'm managing will jump me and become a great manager themselves. And the only way I can do that is if I can give my team the freedom to, kind of experiment, learn, and build out the metrics that they want to build.
So on that note about obviously giving freedom is one way, but what other sort of behind the scenes work are you doing as a manager to set that person or that team up for success? So giving people freedom is a great way, but are you using any sort of project management tools to keep things ticking, or what's the infrastructure behind the success of a team?
Yeah, it depends on sort of how big the team is and also who needs more help and who doesn't. I have basically trackers with most of my team. I have some team members that just need a Google spreadsheet with some, some metrics in there that they want to hit and how they're executing on those metrics to hit it down. And that's as high level as it gets. And those typically tend to be my more senior product marketing managers who want that sort of like, hey, I know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just letting you know so you can manage up, in that expectation. All the way down to like something like Trello. right? Which has been incredibly helpful for more junior product marketing managers who I need to know every step of what's going on because I need to, help guide them. It's not that I'm looking over the shoulder. I hate micromanagement. I won't do it. But sometimes they'll say like, hey, I'm going to move this to this step. Is this okay? And I tend to try to give them the benefit of the doubt and say like, well, do you think it's okay? Right? Are you okay with this? Because I've seen this happen, and this happen. As long as you think it's okay, like move it forward. The great thing of this is, like I really embrace failures and mistakes, which, most of my team really gets them excited. And I remember, one product marketer who worked for me who created a mistake, and she was terrified, and we threw a pizza party for her and was like, hey, you made a mistake. This is awesome. Like, what happened? Like, what metrics changed? Like, how did this go so wrong? Like, and we were all super excited about it that we just wanted to learn from it. And she became she started to work at a much faster rate. She started working at a much more confident rate because she realized, oh, wait, it's okay to make mistakes. We are not doing surgery. No one's going to die, with what we're doing. So yeah, this is great. And, once that freedom came to her, her metrics just started going through the roof. The quality of the stuff that she was producing started going out. The speed at what she was doing started going through the roof. So for us, tracking that sort of stuff through Trello was great. But I think the bigger factor for me was saying, hey, it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to, mess something up. Let's just learn from it.
Sure. And as a manager, are there any other sort of traits and techniques that you've seen work really well? Obviously, it's always going to depend on who you're managing.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any sort of things you've carried through your career, or things you've seen that you think I'm definitely never going to be like that?
Yeah. So the biggest one for me is sort of the micromanagement piece. That's been, the hardest for most people. Most people either want to be micromanaged or they want to be told what to do. That doesn't work for me, and that typically doesn't work for the team, and typically doesn't work for anybody else. When you're working cross-organizationally and cross-functionally as a product marketing manager, people want you to be able to make the call. So, to my product marketers, one of the things that works really well, and I encourage every one of them to do, and I do with the senior leadership team, is we have what's called biweekly syncs, where literally everybody from across every department sits down and we go over every metric, whether the metric is aligned to them or not. They need to know what's going on. And sometimes they come up with ideas. So, we sit down and we go through every metric. I encourage my product marketers to do the same exact thing, where they sit down with every, cross-functional team and they give the information of like, okay, here's where we are with this. We need to move this forward by this much. We're kind of missing here, or, hey, we're doing really great here. Or, hey, this is a big problem, but I'm not sure really what's going on. Does anybody have any ideas? But the piece here that becomes most important is, what gets frustrating is because you're so cross-functional and, work with so many different teams, that when a team member has a question, they're looking to you to answer it. And you need to have the confidence to answer it. One thing that works very badly and becomes very cumbersome is every time you get at, and I did have a product marketer that had this problem, is every time he was asked a question, he goes, I don't know, let me go check with my manager. And then he would run to me and check with me, and then he'd go back. And so instead of one meeting to solve a problem, they were having 4 meetings to solve a problem, right? They had their original meeting, they had a meeting with me, then they had another meeting, and then they had another meeting with me to tell me what happened. It was like, this is definitely not the way to do this, right? So I need my product marketers to be able to be looked at with a meeting and have the capability to say, I don't know, let's do this and find out, right? And really sort of bring that problem-solving piece into it, because they're being looked at to solve that problem.
Yep. So problem solving and basically good communicators.
Yep.
And understanders.
Yep.
And that
and a little bit of a scientist.
Yep.
Right? Like there needs to be a little bit of a scientist. I had a product marketer that, she was incredibly brilliant, and she said, I'm going to run somebody down this path. And I was like, that seems like a really bad path. Like, why are you running them down that path? She goes, well, we're only going to run like 2% of people down this path. but I just want to see what happens. And I was like, sure, go for it. You know, like, and it was fascinating what we learned, like what people were willing to put up with and not put up with. It became like this really sort of fascinating thing, but like we had never thought of doing that, right? Like, because nobody wants to run somebody down a bad path. Like, it's sort of funny, but then we really we found out and figured out, you know, well, here's the areas we need to focus on most because these are the most important areas. So these other areas, people, even if it's not great, they'll put up with it.
Yeah, sure. So they've got to be able to experiment and just go for it, really.
Right. And being that scientist that sort of asks the question of, well, what if, you know, is incredibly important. So great communication, problem solving, and a little bit of a scientist to just say like, hey, what's going to happen here?
So obviously at the moment communication is slightly harder because a lot of people working from home, or not everyone's team is in the same place. So whilst we've done well not to mention it so far, how has sort of coronavirus affected the leading of a team or the building of a team?
That's a great question. So, you know, I have talked to some other directors and people managers who have said it's been a problem for them. Actually, COVID hasn't really been a huge problem for me so far, mostly because of the way that I manage, right? Like I don't micromanage. I want my people to really own their pieces, right? So for me, it's been really easy because my meetings are just check-in meetings, really, and so it's a what's happening. So you know the meetings haven't changed, and because there's no micromanagement, like I don't ask what happens in every single meeting that they're in, but I have other, you know, people managers who are like, well, I have a meeting after every one of my employees has a meeting, right? And I'm like, why do you do that? Why not just join the meeting at that point? You know, why even have that person in that role if you're just gonna ask them what happened in the meeting and just check a box to make sure that whatever you're done, like you need to trust your employees to do what it's done. So for me, it's been relatively easy because I've given that freedom to my employees to actually build and grow and, you know, manage. They give me updates, which is all I'm really looking for, is just the updates of what's happening, what's going on, so I can communicate on a more larger cross-functional arena of, you know, executives and stuff like that on what's going on. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's really been easy. Zoom, Google Hangouts, you know, Slack, you know, even GChat, you know, the old Google Chat has been incredibly helpful for me to communicate with my team on a daily basis.
Sure, I guess in terms of building a team, perhaps the hardest aspect might be onboarding, remote onboarding. When you've got your people, they know what they're doing, you've got the trust in them. But when you're trying to bring someone in, that might be going forward kind of the only issue or the only
Yeah,
pain point.
yeah. So I've actually already started thinking about that as like what's going to happen when I need to bring somebody on. You know, this goes back to sort of the main piece of like, you know, what do I do, you know, to work cross functionally within the organization. You know, in that weekly meeting of saying like, hey, like let me, you know, I need to have biweekly meetings. Then it becomes, so the plan is to have daily meetings, so daily stand-ups with these people, give them the action items that they need to accomplish, ask them what they've learned the day before, and then just continue sort of that cadence of just sort of talking. This is where other people within the organization will step up and help me train those people too. So like it's not only just falling on my shoulders, but hey, I need you to go talk to Mark, you know, about what's going on here and how we're going to solve this problem, right? Like Mark is a great asset, you know, talk to him and help get up to speed. So you're really leaning on your other teammates just as much as you'd be leaning on yourself, you know, to help get that person up and running.
Definitely. So, thank you so much, Aaron, for a really great chat. Um, would you have any sort of final summaries, final concluding thoughts about growing the team, building the team?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I'd like everyone to understand is, and I said it before, you know, your job is to manage people, not to micromanage them, right? So your ultimate goal should really be to have somebody that you manage jump you and you report to them, right? And I know that's a really weird thing, because most people want their careers to go. But if you manage your team in that mindset, you will see freedom within your team to just grow immensely, which will see your career grow immensely as well. So the job is to build great product marketers to make your life easy, which means that those product marketers need to grow and almost become better at, your job than you are. So freedom is key, and mistakes are okay. Just make sure that you're giving them the freedom and not micromanaging them down where they're not actually learning anything.
Sure. So thank you so much again. Really helpful. I'm sure people are going to get a lot from it. And hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds great.
Okay. Cheers, Aaron. Thank you.
Thanks.
Aaron is just joining us now, and he's going to answer some of the questions that are in the chat live. I hope you enjoyed my fireside chat with Aaron. And just at the end there, you saw about how you can level up with PMA team memberships. So I'll be sure to post a link to that in the chat once Aaron has joined. Also, thank you everyone, to everyone for attending, and thank you for all the questions.
So I see a couple of questions here in the chat that I can sort of start to answer right now. So I see a question from Lana Chavez from asking how do you take what's happening at the C-level and bringing that to your team and direct reports? So we typically have a weekly stand-up at all organizations that I've been at that have encouraged people to ask me a question on what's going on the C-level, what's the higher level, sort of strategy and position. So typically we like to have sit down and chats with my team directly. And then if I'm pretty close with my product management team, we have what we call product strategy and engagement meetings, where we bring what is being discussed at the C-level down to those people and give a broader presentation of, like, here's the conversations that are happening at the C-level. This is the strategy. These are the things that we want to move forward. So, and gives them an open forum to actually ask them questions to us straight away. So we really see huge movements with people being open and honest and transparent. When we're transparent with them, we see huge movements and people aligning the goals to what the overall company strategy is, which is really important for us. So I have another question here. I recently pivoted into sales from B2B retail to marketing, and I'm now actively working towards building my profile for product marketing roles. Can you suggest a few transferable skills for someone with my background? B2B sales. So I do work with a lot of sales teams. One of the most important transferable skills that I see from sales is the ability to talk to customers. And part of your job in product marketing is to understand the market, understand the customers, and you need to be able to actually talk to customers and have ongoing conversations and ask the right questions in order for them to learn what's going on, right? So I would actually say that the most transferable skill that you have in sales is the ability to talk to customers. And that is a very rare but extremely important role in understanding what's happening in customers' lives. So I would really position that forward, because the only way that you're going to influence the product, the only way that you're going to influence the marketing, and the only way you're going to influence the strategy is through constant conversations with customers that allow you to get a lot of feedback, and you start gaining that feedback back. I have Jane Willis who says, does your team play a big role in validating product slash market fit? If yes, do you have any tips on how to bring insights and influence from the product, bring insights and influence the product teams? Yes, I mean, that is product marketing's role. From the get-go, we encourage, our product marketers to understand the market better than anybody else. And so the way that we really do that is through quantitative and qualitative analysis. So we run a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis, understanding what are the customer's pain points? Why is that the customer's pain points? How do we solve the pain point? What words resonate with these people in solving that pain point? We really get in depth and we work with product management on sort of, hey, what if we solve the problem this way? Will that actually solve your problem? Because there's a lot of ways you can solve a problem that ultimately will not fill the void or create more work for other people. So we run a lot of quantitative and qualitative analysis, build personas and profiles, why it's their pain point, how we solve the pain point, customers' expectations on how you solve the pain point, and really, drive that through personas and profiles across the organization. I got another question here. What do you feel about the future of product marketing, most especially in emerging economies, and how could it create business opportunities for companies or business in developed countries? So product marketing is an interesting role. You work with a lot of teams that don't have a direct effect on a lot of teams. This is where product marketing and product management have a lot of overlap in what they do. You work with a lot of teams. Product management works with engineers. Marketing works with support and other tools, other people to engage with things. So where product marketing becomes most helpful and how it can move emerging businesses along is by understanding that the customer journey is the most important thing to the business, right? And it's about taking that customer journey and making sure that through the entire customer journey, you have the same message. It's the same, sort of value prop. You may be changing the features and functions that you're presenting to them, but you're really trying to just show them the same message across the platform all the way through. That's why within my organization, we really own the customer journey from a messaging standpoint. So that's why we work with marketing. That's why we work with support. That's why we work with UX and UI, because we own that journey all the way through so that we can make sure that the message is resonating through the whole thing. I had a great product manager that used to tell me, don't ship the org chart. And I fundamentally believe in order to not ship the org chart, you need to have the same messaging across the entire product, and product marketing needs to own that. So what are some good tools and apps you use is another question that I'm seeing now. The tools that I use, really Google Analytics is an incredibly important one. Tableau, I've found great success in. There's a great company out there called Crayon that does really good competitive analysis, which kind of takes the competitive analysis off my plate. Which is great because I don't want my team focused on the front end of the sale the entire time. And that's what happens to most product marketing teams is they get pulled into the front end of the sale, and they're not really worried about how do I explain this customer journey the whole way through. And so, by pawning the customer, the competition off on another tool that becomes incredibly helpful. But you'll get great experiences through Tableau, Power BI, Google Analytics. And then the other one that I use quite often is just Google Trends to see how often people are actually searching for stuff. This gives me a great attitude, a great theory to just sort of jump in and say, like, hey, I have some questions. Let's see if there's any traction to this hypothesis. And you can see that in Google Trends a lot. And then you can get deeper in running quantitative and qualitative analysis. So next question I have is how to react when part of the team thinks or pitch that part of the PMM job could be done or observed by the marketing specific teams. So this is a great question. And what usually happens a lot is organizations will focus on product marketing as a taskmaster. And I will admit, one of my biggest frustrations is when people say, oh, you're in product marketing, your job is to build content. Like, no, my job isn't to build content. My job is to understand the users and work with teams to build the right content. So like, I work with content managers. So if you want to pull the content away from me, go ahead. I'm going to own the strategy of what content gets built and why it gets built for my particular product. So make sure that that's what you own. You want the strategy piece of it, and those tasks to be pushed off on other marketing departments. If you feel like that piece is part of who you are, that tactical piece, I would suggest like trying to up the level and say like, well, now that when I built this piece, this is why I built it, right? And start understanding like how the effect on why something being built is so important. So also these days, it's a little, another question here, sales motions, land and expand, retain cultivative customer advocacy, which is done with CS teams. How close does your team work with CS? My teams work incredibly close with customer success. Because we own the customer journey, the thing that I want to talk about is, it's not about just getting a user into a product. It's about getting the right user into the product. And the only way you're going to get the right user into the product is if you work cross-functionally within somebody coming in. So there's been a lot of times where I've had conversations with people around, hey, we're seeing a bunch of new leads. And then when I go and I look at the numbers, every day I look at what does our active user number look like? How active are those new users coming in? Are we seeing an increase in people who come in and are active users? Because if there's not, then we're not getting the right people in. So I work very closely with marketing on how people get onboarded and inside a product. And then I work incredibly close with customer support to say like, okay, what's the percentage of people that are becoming active? Because my job as the customer journey is to move people from novice users to lax users to power users. Those are important. That creates a healthy product. So I need to make sure that we're messaging correctly to each one of those users, pulling them up, and that we're retaining those current users. Because without those users, what we're standing on is what I like to call a shaky table, right? You build your success on the back of your customers, which means that if your customers come in and they're not using the product, there's a good likelihood that they're going to leave. And the legs of those tables are being built by the people that you bring into the product. So if those people leave, then your product is going to fall apart. You're going to have a big issue, and ultimately you're not going to have a job anymore because you have nothing to sustain yourself with. So make sure you're working with customer success. Remember, your job does not stop as soon as you hit somebody becoming a salesperson, right? Or the sale is done, right? Like, you need to continue checking in with those users and own the customer journey. So.
Awesome. Aaron, there was a question asked just during the chat from Matthew Simmons. If you just scroll a little bit, he said, hello from London. I was wondering if you were looking to hire a new PMM, what would be a must on the resume?
So that's a great question. So typically when I'm looking at resumes, I'm looking at, I'm looking for metrics. How did you push something forward, right? So like, hey, I increased sales by this much, but that just tells me you're a salesperson. But then if you put, I increased sales by this much, but then we increased retention by this much, I'm saying, okay, interesting. You solve problems, right? And you're solving problems that go beyond just the sales funnel. That's becoming interesting to me. So how have you influenced numbers to be moved in a bunch of different areas? I will tell you, my biggest frustration is when somebody says, like, created all the new content for an expansion. Like, well, great. Why did you create all the new content? Like, tell me why, right? Like, the optimization of a product marketer is to move the needle, not just to build something to build. So, I need to understand that you know why something is built, right? And why moving this forward was important, because that's what's going to move the needle.
Awesome. And you've had a few thank yous as well in the chat throughout this as well.
Of course.
But I think that's it for the questions. Great to speak to you again.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you to everyone who did tune in and did ask questions as well. Sorry, had a little lag there. And I think that'll be everything, Aaron.
Thank you.
Awesome. See you soon.
All right. Bye, everybody.